KTSA News Time is 4:36. Jack Riccardi for Thursday. Even if you've never been to it, everybody's heard of it because it was heavily marketed for many, many years on radio. Timberwood Park. The Timberwood Park neighborhood was known for big lots and big houses on big lots, and it's up north of 1604 and a little west of 281. As described in a recent article in the San Antonio Report at sanantonioreport.org, they added a smaller subdivision to the development about 12 years ago. It was smaller lots and smaller houses, and they put them on a common septic system. That system for that neighborhood called Villas at Timberwood Park has been problematic for people ever since they moved in, and it has resulted, according to San Antonio Report, in HOA fees at times exceeding $5,000 a year. This problem was presented to new County Commissioner Grant Moody, who apparently obtained the funding to solve it. Now, questions about conflict of interest in how the county is solving that has brought us to this point where we have invited both Bexar County Commissioner Grant Moody and his Republican challenger Chris Shukar to join us here on KTSA. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming on. We appreciate your time, both of you.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having us.
Commissioner, if I can start with you, the San Antonio Report article lays out what a nightmare it's been for the 75 or so homeowners that are living with a septic system that doesn't always work, that's inadequate for the demand. And this was brought to you, and you were able to get the fellow commissioners, correct me if I get any of this wrong, to go along with using some COVID relief money to address the problem. Is that right?
Sure, that's right. The HOA there at Timberwood Villas had reached out to us about this situation, terrible situation that they've been in for years and years. I mean, the problem goes back almost a decade. They've been in litigation for 5 years now. And ultimately, this is an area, water and sewer, that qualifies for federal COVID dollars, and it only made sense to try to fix this problem, which was not only just a problem for Timberwood Villas, but as you know from reading the article, this septic field was next to Mustang Creek. It's over the Edwards Aquifer. So this was the right thing to do all around for Bexar County. You know, we can't have the Edwards Aquifer polluted by this. And really, our Environmental Services Department said the only solution was to connect them to sewer.
The history of Timberwood Park, and again, I referenced those radio spots. We all heard them for many years. G.G. Gale was the developer. His son, Jason Gale, now. And the article describes the fact that Jason Gale and you, Commissioner Moody, have in common, I guess I don't really understand exactly what this is, some sort of timeshare arrangement with an airplane. Is that right?
Yeah, there's joint ownership, 4 shares in a 1969 Cherokee 6, valuation $120,000. You know, my share was $30,000  4 years ago. So not what my opponent has tried to make this out to be. Anyway, I've spent a total of about 2 hours with Jason Gale over those 4 years, and you know, this is an LLC that's very common, you know, to hold these private recreational airplanes, and ultimately, you know, this had no impact whatsoever on this situation. And to be honest, we didn't even know he was involved in the lawsuit until we got to the point where we were at mediation.
Chris Shukar, you made a video about this, and you say this is a conflict of interest, and you say that this is something that Grant Moody should have disclosed. Tell me more about why you think this is important.
Well, absolutely. I believe it's shameful that he spent the last 2 months ducking Republican voters, and it took the San Antonio Report article for him to finally admit his relationship with Jason Gale after stating he'd never spoken with him. You know, at the end of the day, regardless of the value or the structure of the entity, the taxpayer is shoring up a private settlement, the details of which we have none, and Commissioner Moody just happens to own or be a manager director in an LLC with this entity. From the optics of that, you can't, and this issue was something that we didn't go looking for. This issue was brought to us by residents of Timberwood Park who had caught wind of this possible solution and could not get satisfaction or answers from Commissioner Moody's office. They in turn engaged us, gave us the information that we had, of which we looked into it, and at the end of the day, for the cost associated with this and the fact that there was pending litigation, and when this was first brought up at Commissioner's Court on July 11th by Commissioner Moody, he failed to inform all the other members of the Commissioner's Court of his involvement with this individual. I cannot believe that Bexar County Environmental Services, if he was this involved as he claims, he had no idea that Jason Gale was involved with the villas at Timberwood Park. I do not believe that. He never told the commissioners of his business relationship with them, nor did he tell them that there was current pending litigation, which I think as the taxpayers, it's not whether we deserve to know that, we need to know that information.
Is it your contention that in solving this with federal COVID funds, is it your contention, Mr. Schuchart, that he sort of bailed out Jason Gale?
Well, yes, because not only do they have shared common ownership of the airplane, but Jason Gale also owns houses in the villas. So now not only did his lawsuit problem get taken care of, but now real estate that he owns, which, mind you, I'm standing here right now staring at the septic field and watching 6 deer eat in the middle of it, and every house in the villas sold for around $210,000 when they were first built, with the last house being sold for $477,000. So this situation, while it is a problem, and I think it would be an easier sell had there been transparency. For instance, Bexar County Environmental Services should have come out and released all the studies that they had done to show that this was the only option, instead of leaving people guessing what the plan's going to be and what it's going to do to Timberwood Park proper. At the end of the day, when you take all that into account, this sure seems like cronyism, in my opinion.
Commissioner Moody, is there any part of this that you think you should have handled differently?
No, there's not, Jack. And listen, I'm getting tired of the baseless political attacks from my desperate opponent here. The reality is, where do we start? You know, first of all, we've been very transparent. The Environmental Services letter was read at Commissioner's Court. They said, for the safety of residents of Timberwood and the public, it is critical that this system be discontinued and residents be connected to city sewer. Let me read from the open letter from the 66 homeowners in Timberwood Villas. The facts as portrayed in the ad of his political opponent, Chris Schuchart, on this issue are simply not true. And we hope that the health and well-being of our families, our neighbors, and the Edwards Aquifer will not be jeopardized by such misinformation. Let me just say, too, the attack about pending litigation, again, factually inaccurate. You know, there's two separate pieces here. They were going forward with the best advice of their lawyers to go to mediation and try to reach a settlement. That is completely separate from the decision post-settlement for the county to allow them to apply for federal dollars, which they absolutely were allowed to do, and they were selected as the top project by county staff, which we had no involvement in that scoring. And ultimately, I disclosed to every single member of Commissioner's Court my relationship with Jason Gale, which is very limited, and there were no concerns, and there were no concerns brought up in court. You know, we're doing this for the right reasons, for the homeowners, for our community, for our county, and I'm not going to let political cheap shots get in the way of that.
Mr. Schuchart, let me ask you this. If you had been the commissioner at this moment during this period, would there have been a different way you would have addressed the problems of the villas? In other words, are you quibbling with the fix, or are you quibbling with what you think is a conflict of interest with the fix?
Well, one, let me back up real quick. So the letter read by the Bexar County Environmental Services Department at Commissioner's Court, mind you, this is the same Bexar County Environmental Services that permitted this project to go forward in 2014. So their findings really don't carry much water. As far as a letter from 66 residents, if I had a septic issue at my house and somebody else was going to pay for it and get me out of pending litigation or get me out of a lawsuit, why would I not say that the claims I'm making are baseless?
Mm-hmm.
Two, this is a private deal. Every developer, I've talked to multiple developers about this deal, and this is completely unheard of. In the development world, it is your responsibility to bring sewer to the property if you're going to build houses. So at the end of the day, well, I have issues with the fix, but the problem is nobody has enough details to understand what all the fix is going to entail other than a map from Pape Dawson showing a sewer line being placed in the middle of the same creek that they are so concerned with protecting. If that was the only option, that's fine. But the Bexar County taxpayer does not need to pay for the negligence and recklessness of a developer and a builder. That's not our responsibility. And so at the end of the day, while it's an unfortunate situation, as I stated, every house in there has gained in value by $200,000 to $300,000. As of now, there's no sewage laying out in that field. So I would wonder if Commissioner Moody ever actually even went out there and looked at the situation, or if he's driven over Timberline Drive and looked at the culvert bridge where that sewer line is going to run through and see the impact that it was going to have on everybody.
What's your response to that, Commissioner Moody?
So I guess my question to Chris, because I don't think we got an answer there, is that you would not have done anything to help these constituents, 75 homeowners and their families who are put in this situation. Is that what I heard?
I would have told them to pursue with their lawsuit.
They pursued the lawsuit for 5 years. They've gone to mediation multiple times. This was the best.
Since when does mediation result in the taxpayer bailing out the settlement?
Well, again, I'll just say this. This was actually an opportunity to use federal dollars on capital projects here in Bexar County, which I've been an advocate for, instead of some of the other projects that have previously had dollars spent on them. I would much rather have federal COVID dollars be spent on capital projects and infrastructure here in Bexar County. And really, we can go round and round, but at the end of the day, the experts said there weren't any other potential solutions, and the legal channels had been exhausted, and that left these 75 homes in a desperate situation, and there was no other option. So either we were going to use federal dollars that are allowed for these kinds of projects to be utilized, or we let this problem continue to fester, and we this sewer.
Let me just, so we don't run out of time here, gentlemen. Since I started with you, Commissioner Moody, if I can, let me give Chris Schuhart the last word. Just a few seconds. The response to that.
So that tells me you're in a business relationship and okay with being one if all the legal options have been exhausted with someone who won't step up and assume the responsibilities for their heirs.
It kind of sounds to me, listening to the two of you, like the dispute is. There's taxpayer money being spent to fix what something that probably shouldn't have been allowed to go forward in the first place, because everything I've read says that this is not a normal way. This community septic is not a normal way of managing sewage. But it sounds like the dispute between the two of you is that, Commissioner Moody, you think you're spending the money to improve infrastructure, and Chris Schuhart, you think he's spending the money to bail out a developer. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Well,
I mean, it sounds like that's what each of you are kind of summing up your positions on.
Jack,
and let me say,
situation.
What was that?
I would just say this is a very unique situation, and this would not be my first choice in any way, shape, or form. But ultimately, it's the last option that these homeowners had available.
And so you're saying, okay, this is the government riding to the rescue, and Chris Schuhart, you're saying this is somebody bailing out an associate with government money, correct?
And negatively impacting thousands of homes around it to solve the problems of 76 homes.
All right, I got to hold you both there. I appreciate both of you think it's great that you both were willing to come on and talk to us and talk to each other. Grant Moody, the county commissioner, and his challenger, Chris Schuhart. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. We'll get a look at KTSA time saver traffic right here.
Prom spot on the north